got it. They want a return on their investment. So why should they do business with you? I mean, and that's the same thing that we would want to know when we're investing our money as well. So, and I would really hope that you guys would write these 3 things down, because when you start talking to, you know, large businesses, you know, these are the types of things that you could tell them that you offer them as a small business. The second thing was that it's an incremental increase in market share. So that's what they're looking for. So we come to the table, and it helps us to flip our script as well when we talk to contracting officers as well, not just large businesses. So what can we do for you? So, and the third thing was strategic market advantage. So there's a space that we're operating in that small businesses, you know, I mean large businesses cannot operate. And so I thought that those 3 things are monumental, you know, for us as small businesses to really, you know, just switch up and change the way we approach large businesses, because we might see the opportunities, you know, are opening, because, you know, you tell me that you have a good, sound business, you know, idea, and I have the money to invest, and I'm looking for an investment, you know, at least you're gonna get my attention. So, you guys, once again, I just want to thank Ms. Beverly, you know, for coming with us, and we're gonna open it up for questions at this point. So, and Bev.
Incremental market share. Translation. Access to contracts and business dollars that they don't normally have access to. And I function in 5629. And my area of business, there is $2.8 or so billion in small business this year. That's a market space that large business doesn't have access to. And they're coming out in great huge chunks this year, which is different from any other year. They're coming out in $200, $300, $400 million chunks, because the Olympics, you know, because the environmental community has seen their projects frozen over the last couple of years. But now it's just gushing, and there's going to be billions of dollars actually left this year. And that's something that you actually inform them that, but they already know. But you want to reinforce that knowledge on them, that there's this whole another pot of money that you can't get to, but I'm there. I'm not only there, but I'm qualified to do the work. I just need a little bit extra help. And that's how we help each other. You give me this knowledge, I give you this access, because I already have this knowledge, but I'm lacking this.
Valerie, can I suggest that, yeah, go ahead, have Mr. Quinn come up, and then we can both answer questions at the same time.
So you guys, Paul Chann is the procurement center representative for the SBA district office out of San Francisco. He works out of Office of Government Contracting. And one of the things that I want to make you guys aware of is that the PCR has the ability, you know, for the agencies that are within their purview to stop a contract dead in its tracks if they have not complied, you know, with the law. So without further ado, Mr. Paul Chann, he'll tell you more about it. Thank you, Paul. Can you guys join me in welcoming Paul?
I'm happy to be here. It's the second time we were here before. I have to be a little bit more modest and correct. Valerie, we don't necessarily, we aren't necessarily able to stop people in their tracks. We can make a lot of fuss, and sometimes that's not tracks.
Are you guys still here?
We try. I have passed out, what I wanted to do really was to try to give you a little bit larger context.
Okay.
The upcoming Women on Small Business program is a very important program, and I do want to talk about that. But it's happening at a time when federal procurement policies are making a lot of tweaks and adjustments. And what I do is to keep abreast of what's happening. what I have passed out, recent policy changes. I wanted to point out that on August 30th, just passed, the final rule was issued to provide the dollar thresholds throughout the procurement policies. Now, for example, those of you who have dealt with the lower end know that there was a definition of a simplified acquisition procedures that allowed contracting officers to do very simple kinds of procurements when the value of the buy was under $100,000. That's now changed to $150,000. There are a number of thresholds also involving the 8A program or other parts of procurement policy that if they affect you, you should become aware of how those changes have taken place. And you can find them in the August 30th Federal Register. The next item after that, on September 3rd, there was a report issued by an interagency task force that was created by executive order to come up with proposals for how to improve contracting in the interest of small business. There is a final report on that. That task force still will meet and elaborate on those report requirements. And we give you a website address if you're interested in seeing what that report dealt with, so that as you become involved in the process of influencing policy itself, you want to be aware of what this task force and what the government is trying to do. Then on September 27th, there was the Small Business Jobs Act, which most of us were aware that that was another part of the recovery program where we were adding a lot of money to small business financing. What is less known is the fact that at the same time, we added into the Jobs Act a lot of changes in procurement policies that affect small business.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry?
I'm agreeing.
Yeah. And it includes some things that you're aware of. That, there used to be a big argument about considering the different set-aside programs and how the HUB zone program had to take priority. I think probably most of you are aware that that priority that the HUB zone set-aside program had no longer exists. There's now a parity principle. That was one of the provisions of the Jobs Act. Those of you who are in construction know that procurement offices often would not do small business set-aside in the construction industry because of something called the Competitive Demonstration Program.
Right.
That prohibited. That law is now off the books.
Well, could you explain that?
Provision in the Jobs Act.
Could you explain the Competitive Demonstration Act and how that relates to, us as small businesses versus how the agency procures?
Well, I'll try to capsulize it as it doesn't affect everybody. The Competitive Demonstration Program was, frankly, an anti-small business, as particularly anti-small business set-aside program, or policy, if you will. It prohibited contracting offices from doing small business set-asides in certain designated industry groups. Those industry groups were construction, architectural engineering services, refuse removal, and non-nuclear ship repair. Why they separated non-nuclear with nuclear, I don't know. It provided that as long as procurement, or as long as agencies were achieving certain goals, usually 40%.
Small business?
In small business awards, that they could not do set-asides. Which, if you stop, think about it, for a lot of those industries, is not bad. If in fact, and in fact in construction, what we saw happening was large businesses didn't want to bid on projects that were under 10 million anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So when they went out unrestricted for a lot of the smaller projects under 10 million, small businesses usually would win them anyway. Okay, so there just was a lot of unnecessary control in that process, which in the wisdom of things now, we've abandoned the competitive demonstration program. So that kind of rule about when you can do set-asides or when you cannot do set-asides no longer applies. in those
So-
districts. Yeah.
For construction, there was a lot of, especially with the Navy, we were getting a lot of feedback from the Navy because they wouldn't do set-asides, and I think that they were using, the fact that,
Yeah.
we met our small business goals, and in construction,
Yeah.
especially in San Diego, that was an issue for some of our contractors.
You
So
should-
now you're saying that the Jobs Act has done away with that?
Yeah, you should, that's right. You should see a lot of set-asides because, as Beverly cited a number of times, often what drives this is the so-called rule of two. And so, in fact, for a lot of these procurements that were prohibited under the competitive demonstration program from being set aside, now have to be done as set aside because usually it's easy to find two or more companies and are very competitive price-wise. So very reasonable, it's no problem.
So I have a question in reference to that. So if an agency has two small businesses that will, bid or propose, are they required now to set that contract aside? Because what we get from the Navy is that, we just need more participation than two people, two companies. I'm
Yeah.
a little,
No, it was two or more, and that the resulting competition, when restricted to small business set-aside, will likely produce a fair and reasonable price.
okay.
The argument you usually will get, they're usually smarter than that you're saying, oh no, we want to open it to the world. Yeah, unfortunately, there are still